we have yet more insider confirmation that Final Fantasy IX Remake and Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered is still in development. I'm sure by now everyone knows about these rumored projects and the countless leaks surrounding them, maybe questioning whether or not they're even real at this point. But rest assured that both of these are almost certainly very real projects within Square Enix, with both games being listed within the Nvidia leaks as far back as 2021, with the large majority of the games on the list having been true as well as released. We have insider NateTheHate, who has been known for revealing info about games well before the release, including that of the Nintendo announcement earlier this year. And it looks like both games are still well on their way. So let's get into it. So we have NateTheHate pretty much responding to an X user who asks if there is any more news regarding Final Fantasy IX Remake or Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, to which NateTheHate replies, both remain in active development. Final Fantasy IX Remake isn't expected to release in 2025. Maybe we'll see it launch in 2026. And now I know we've all seen these leaks over and over again saying, well, we know these games are being worked on and we'll probably get a glimpse this year or next year, and as more time passes, it becomes clear that they won't be announced anytime soon. Keep in mind that both of these games were first leaked back in 2021 on the GeForce Now database listings 4 years ago. And that's not even taking into account that these games were probably already in early stages of development before that listing was posted, a fair amount of time for both games to be in development. However, that's also not taking into account internal and external setbacks such as the pandemic and any other development issues. Back in June of 2024, it was reported that Final Fantasy IX Remake was having internal development issues. However, despite those setbacks, the project was not in danger of being cancelled and is still making progress. This notable setback that they speak of was the fact that Square Enix reportedly outsourced this remake project to another studio before eventually taking it back in-house. If you recall, this also happened with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it begs the question as to why Square Enix would even subject their biggest projects to treatment like this, especially outsourcing twice when clearly that didn't work the first time. One of the biggest leaks of last year was the fact that this supposed 9 remake was spotted in the Epic Store database with other downloadable content, alongside titles like Final Fantasy XVI PC, codenamed Skobeloff at the time, before it eventually released mid last year. Now, these listings are only created when a game is far along in development, or pretty much done, right? So, from all the sources, all the leaks, and pretty much all the information we have now, we know that Final Fantasy IX Remake is very far along in development. Also, it's like, when can we see it? Additionally, we know that Final Fantasy Tactics has reportedly been in development alongside the 9 remake. Yoshi P, the director and producer of Final Fantasy XIV and producer of 16, stressed how he would love to see a Tactics remaster, or even work on an entirely new Tactics game. And you know, this would ultimately work given that Creative Studio 3 is very familiar with medieval and high fantasy settings. They've also, on multiple occasions, have worked with Yasumi Matsuno, the director of both Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy XII. He's collaborated on Final Fantasy XIV multiple times, the most notable one being the Ivalice story and the raids. And for the most part, it seems like both directors have a really good relationship when it comes to game development, and given that Yasumi Matsuno also comes back to Square Enix to sometimes collaborate with other developers, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we did see Yoshi P and Yasumi Matsuno both collaborating to bring us this Final Fantasy Tactics remaster. You know, I think it's only a matter of time before we see this game, especially given that this isn't really a large-scale project. I mean, even 9 Remake is bigger than this, and both games are said to be a lot smaller in scale than something like 7 Remake. We know that back in June of last year, Creative Studio 3 was said to be working on 2 unannounced projects that would soon be announced, as stated by Yoshi P himself. Now, one of these games we know was Fantasian Neo Dimension, a game originally created by Sakaguchi himself, but in collaboration with Creative Studio 3 and Yoshi P, Fantasian was given a much needed overhaul and ported to modern consoles as well as PC. If we're to believe that both of these games are to be announced soon, and one of them has already been announced and released, it makes sense for both of these projects that they're working on currently to be smaller scale, and so you know, I personally think that this Tactics remaster was given to them, and it really lines up perfectly. You know, what it ultimately comes down to is Square Enix, and the fact that right now they're currently going through a major company shift after experiencing failing profits even on their heavy-hitting titles, such as most recently Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Games that are supposed to be Square Enix's golden goose, yet are struggling to break even and cover some of the development costs. And so, you know, I think 2025 will most likely be a very quiet year when it comes to Square Enix. Game development can be a very unpredictable endeavor at times, and these two games especially might have actually been planned to be announced late last year, or maybe even possibly this year. But with what's happening over at Square Enix, many plans from a large majority of games could have very well changed because of something like this new multi-platform strategy. But hopefully Square Enix is cooking up something, because their pipeline of games is not looking too good. So tell me what you think about all of this down below. Of course, I am no industry insider, but you know, given that I research this stuff regularly, I am almost certain that these games are 100% in active development and most likely near completion as of now. The question remains when Square Enix will finally unveil probably some of the worst kept secrets in gaming.